Welcome back, everyone, to the HNL Movement podcast. And today's going to be a special episode. This is the first time we have two people on the podcast to share their stories, so this should be an exciting one. And we have Marcus Malepeai and Chanteal Satele joining me on the podcast today. Thanks so much for joining me.
Oh, awesome. Thanks for having us, Andrew.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, of course. So let's jump straight into it. You know, both of you have played at UH, right? Had successful careers, and you guys also knew each other and were dating, right, back at UH.
Yep.
So a lot of history back there, and then both of you have to navigate, being a student athlete and kind of navigating different sports and, the environment of that in Hawaii. So let's start before that. Well, did you guys know each other before UH? You met at UH?
No. This is a story.
Yeah, so
whatever you want to share. Yeah.
So, I mean, I kind of knew of Chanteal's family because, because the Sateles, they're basically a household name down here in Hawaii. So it was funny because I felt like I knew her before I even introduced myself to her. And she was like, oh, it's kind of low-key stalker status.
No, we actually met at a drug test for UH, like my first spring. I think it was your first spring, yeah?
And then how did the conversation started with me, like, oh, your dad is Alvin,
he told me my whole family story.
Your brother is Brashen, Nico.
I thought it was cute.
Yeah.
And that's when you guys first really met each other for the first time.
So when we first started talking to each other and whatnot.
Yeah. So let's go briefly into a lot of the athletes that come on. We hear kind of their story growing up, and I know you guys probably know each other's story very well, right? But think about growing up. Were there a lot of similarities with how you guys were introduced to sports, how you guys played sports, or were there a lot of differences?
You take this one.
We may have differences.
Yeah, you guys can share briefly each of your stories.
Yeah. Okay, so for me, like, my family was always involved in sports. My parents were athletes, and they kind of just kept us around. Like, my brothers would be playing baseball or football, and I would just be at the park and then kind of get into it. And then we just grew up always doing something. Like, my mom was all about not wasting time, like, stay busy, don't just sit at home, get outside and do something. So she kept us busy and on our toes. So I kind of just rode into it, followed my brothers around, and then followed my mom around, and then got into volleyball. And then from there on, they were following me around the gym for tournaments. So
did you start volleyball at a young age, or when did you start volleyball?
I was about like 10, maybe 12. I actually started with Kanani Danielson.
Yes.
Yeah, so that was cool that we got to end our college career together. But I guess mine was kind of we just grew up doing it. I don't know. Yeah. And we just jumped in, and jumping into volleyball, I knew that I loved that sport more than anything else. I was not a basketball fan. I knew that. I was telling him, like, oh, basketball's my favorite sport.
What other sports did you try a lot during your childhood?
I did soccer, barely.
Barely.
Baseball, softball, basketball for a little. I did track and volleyball in high school. That was kind of my thing.
Got it.
Yeah, and then college, just straight volleyball. Yeah.
And I think that's common for a lot of, children growing up around sports with siblings. Just jump in and follow along, and you try all these different sports, right? Yeah. What about for you, Marcus? What was your sports growing up looking like?
I grew up playing football, basketball. Those are basically the two sports as a young kid. And then in high school, I mean, like, sports was just one of those things that just, like, kind of like Chanteal, like, just kept us busy, kept us out of trouble, helped us keep our grades up in school. And then I never did see, like, the long run. I didn't see football becoming such a big part of my life. Like, my plan in high school was to honestly join the military. I went to Radford High School, so that was kind of the route that my parents had for me. And then, going into my senior year in high school, that's when things changed. Like, I got my first offer from UH, and that kind of just changed everything,
Yes. Yeah.
So it was a huge blessing. And then, I ended up falling in love with the sport and met the love of my life at our school. And I just went from there.
Yeah, it's crazy how the story kind of unfolds.
Yeah.
Did you start football at a really young age?
Yes, I played Pop Warner.
Okay.
But then back then, there's weight limits.
Yeah.
So I think I played 1 or 2 years, and my first year, I believe, I was playing midgets already. I don't know if you're familiar with the age groups and stuff, but Yeah, my first year I got thrown in with the big guys.
Got it.
I remember my mom being so mad at my dad because I would come home from practices and games like all bruised up, like, I don't want my son playing, he's getting all beat up. And I was at the time I was young playing with these older kids, you know.
Elementary school.
Yeah,
sure,
and then I remember, so I just had this conversation with somebody, but I remember I had teammates that were like almost in high school already.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I never realized, like I used to think like, oh, that's so cool, you know, there's a ninth grader on my team. And then come to realize like, oh, that's not so cool. Young guys.
It's crazy how like when you're growing up, right, that 1 year difference makes like such a huge difference in Pop Warner.
Absolutely.
But then, you know, when you get to like obviously high school, college, you know, it kind of evens the playing field a little bit. But what positions did you play, you know, when you started, and did that always evolve to, you know, being D-line, and what was that like?
I played mostly on the line. I played a little bit of linebacker, but then I always found a home like in the trenches. That's the best position. I'm being completely honest. It's that's the most physical, the most contact, you know. But in high school, I played mostly defensive end, and I played a little bit of offensive guard.
Got it.
So they used to use me on packages where I would just pull and just crank the defensive end as hard as I can. I used to love those, man. But then I got recruited as an offensive lineman as well, but I love defensive line. I love playing, you know, making plays, that kind, you know.
Got it.
Hearing your name called when you get a sack. Yeah, that's all the glory right there.
Yeah. And for both of you, so, you know, you ended up playing volleyball, a successful career, and football. And both of you, you know, in your positions, right, height is kind of something that's helps, right? With the skill level and playing at the next level. So were you guys always kind of on the taller side growing up, or how was that? Did that factor into what positions you guys played?
Yeah. Well, for me in Hawaii, I was tall.
Taller,
for 5'9". So outside hitter was kind of my thing from when I started. But you go to the mainland, and girls are like 6'4" and higher, so you're short. You're like the size of their liberos. So. But I mean, being from Hawaii, they like the heart, from us girls. So I mean, outside hitter was always it for me.
Got it. So even when you first started at 10, outside hitter,
it was always
Oh, that's good.
Straight up.
And what about for you? Was height something that?
You know, I thought I was tall, and then I come to UH, and then we go and play teams from the mainland, and oh man! So I don't know if you remember, but our defensive line, I would say we averaged out at about 6'1". Which is kind of short for our position, you know. But I think that played more to our advantage, you know. To be honest, I think you know, being shorter, we had that leverage, so it was a lot easier to take on a guy that was taller than us.